Well, you guys asked for this. In this video, I'm going to be talking about Monopoly Cheaters Edition and why it's the worst tabletop game I have ever played. This video was requested by too many of you for me to remember, so a lot of people. Spoiler alert, I do not like this game, and if you enjoy this game, or if you aren't open to hearing others' opinions, you probably won't like what I have to say. That being said, if you actually like Monopoly Cheaters Edition for some reason, that's totally cool. I'm not saying you aren't allowed to like it, but I personally do not. I will not be pulling any punches here, so you have been warned. If you look at how long this video is, it's clear I have a lot to say. Let's begin. Chapter 1. My context. I feel like it would be fair for me to explain the situation I was in when I first played Monopoly Cheaters Edition, which I will now be referring to as MCE. Backstory time. Official Luke lore is happening right now. It was like 3 or 4 years ago, whenever Monopoly Cheaters Edition was on Walmart shelves. So not an extremely long time ago, but long enough for my thoughts on this game to develop, fester, and slowly decay. Where I live, going to Walmart as a group is one of the fun things young people do because there is literally nothing else. So one day, a small group of my friends and I went to Walmart searching for a board game we could all play together. While there, we stumbled across MCE, and instantly, one of my friends snatched it off the shelf and loudly asked, "What if we got this one?" Now, this particular friend of mine, for whatever reason, was going through a Monopoly phase at the time. Starting about a month prior to this event, they would suggest we all play Monopoly at any given opportunity. Now, I want to be absolutely crystal clear about this next point. I like Monopoly. It's definitely not in my top 10 favorite games or anything like that, but I really like it. Not sure I know what my top 10 favorite games are anyway, but I'm fairly certain Monopoly isn't on the list. Still, really enjoyable in my opinion. It's a classic experience that almost everyone knows how to play already, and it offers a lot of strategy and competitive scenarios. However, Monopoly is not a game that you should be playing more than once a month in my opinion. Casual players often don't enjoy the length of Monopoly, and the competitive nature of the game can lead to real-world conflict rather easily, much like Uno. It's often difficult to get a game of Monopoly going with friends because they know what Monopoly is all about. Monopoly is an experience that should be treated as a rare and special occasion for everyone involved, and preferably you should know you're going to be playing Monopoly in advance so people have time to mentally prepare themselves. On top of that, Monopoly is not for everyone. These are all just things to keep in mind. To be fair, overplaying any game is detrimental to both you and the game, but due to the nature of Monopoly, it's almost designed to not be played frequently. I mean, even Mr. Beast knows that because it's the only game he offered in that recent video of his where he said if these two people could stay in a room for 100 days, they'd get a ton of money or whatever. You probably know what I mean already, but I want to be clear. Anyway, with that context in place, it should be known that before this fateful trip to Walmart took place, everyone who was there that day, including myself, had played Monopoly probably 5 or 6 times in the last month. This was all because that particular friend of mine would insist we play it at every possible opportunity. Reading the room, it was safe to say that everyone there except for that one friend was sick to death of Monopoly. Perhaps this would have been different if all of the 5 or 6 games of Monopoly we played recently were actual enjoyable experiences, or if we had just played less of it in general. There was nothing wrong with the first or second game, but after the third game, things became very forced and tedious. It was clear from that point on that at least I was playing Monopoly just to make that one friend happy, and not for my own personal enjoyment. That didn't mean I wasn't going to try to win the game or anything. Now I want you to put yourself in my shoes for a moment. When it comes to Monopoly, I'm quite competitive and I put effort into winning. I know a few strategies and how to work around other strategies. I wouldn't call myself a Monopoly expert or anything, but when I play with my friends, I'd say I have about a 30 to 40% win rate. There's no real math there, I'm just guesstimating. So during these games of Monopoly where I was playing for the sake of someone else, I can at least get some enjoyment out of winning, or trying to win. However, that one friend, on multiple occasions while I was objectively winning the game, would say something like, "I want to be done." And as if their word was law, the game was over. And it was never because they were hungry, or bored, or wanted to do something else. It was because they were losing the game that they wanted to quit. And since everyone else probably didn't even want to play Monopoly in the first place, they were all like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And I do not blame the others for that. It was kinda torturous. But I can blame that one friend for forcing me a game I don't want to play, seeing that I'm winning and they're losing, and ending the game prematurely. You cannot even begin to understand how frustrated and angry this made me feel. All this to say, this is why Monopoly should be an experience, and a relatively rare occurrence, because otherwise nonsense like this happens. And this is also why you should plan a game of Monopoly in advance, so people are more willing to commit to playing the game and are more willing to endure. People need to be willing to finish the game of Monopoly if they're going to play it, otherwise it's no fun. I was robbed of at least 2 completely fair Monopoly wins because of how flawed this situation was, and I carry that with me to this day. Now, imagine after that exact event has happened multiple times, along with half a year's worth of Monopoly games crammed into a single month just before this, that one friend suggests we buy another Monopoly at Walmart. I wanted to say no, because I had already played Monopoly enough, and I didn't want to play anymore. However, I came to a realization, and perhaps the others did as well, I don't know, that if MCE wasn't bought, I'd end up being forced to play regular Monopoly again anyway, so we might as well spice it up a bit. It didn't seem like the game would be any less fun either, because it promised new mechanics on the back of the box. So, in the end, we reluctantly left Walmart with MCE in tow. Little did I know that very soon I'd be playing the worst tabletop game I've ever known. I didn't even pay for the game, and I want my money back with interest. Now, this whole bit has just been me providing the context clues for the disaster that is my experience with MCE, and I'm completely willing to admit that this set of circumstances definitely influenced my opinion on MCE negatively. This is just a drop in the bucket in the grand scheme of things, though. After I played it, I'm convinced that I could have been in the best mood ever, like my entire year could have been perfect up to that point, and this game still would have managed to ruin my everything. Time to talk about the game. Chapter 2. First Impressions and Design. Let's start getting into the meat of the topic now. On paper, MCE seems like it would be an excellent idea and an overall good time. And I'm sure this is what Hasbro was thinking when they were making this thing. And I'm sure this is what almost everyone who bought this game thought to themselves without knowing how flawed the game truly was. This is all at least partially due to one of the few good things I'll say about MCE. The concept, theme, and marketing do an excellent job of luring people in. Because cheating is so prevalent in Monopoly, it only makes sense to create a version of the game where cheating is a feature rather than a glitch. I know there are a good chunk of people that bought this game because the people they play with tend to cheat, and as they buy MCE they think, my friend or family member who cheats at normal Monopoly will like this version even more. Or, I'll be able to have my revenge for all of their cheating using this version of Monopoly. And Hasbro is just sleeping on the money pile at that point because their job is already done. It doesn't matter if the game is even good now. People have already bought it. And I can almost guarantee that a lot less effort was put into developing this game than most, just because Hasbro knew they could get away with it, and because of how flawed these game mechanics are, which I'll get into later. Anyway, the marketing and theme were both excellent, and to accompany that, the design of the game from an artistic standpoint is also really good in my opinion. The board looks like you took a regular Monopoly board and made it dark mode. The colors feel more vibrant, and there's a neon aesthetic on the properties. To complement that change, the cards and other various artwork have a gritty and rough design, which is similar to the aesthetic that the recent Uno Show 'em No Mercy has. It's a design that screams, yeah, this is Monopoly, but it's cooler and now you have to try it. Overall, I like the artistic direction taken here, and those few aspects definitely helped the sales of this game. I really hope you cherish those few compliments I'm willing to give to this piece of garbage, because everything else I have to say about it will be the equivalent of a baseball bat swing to the stomach. Assuming you were standing in for MCE and I was standing in for myself wielding a baseball bat. That's what it will feel like. Chapter 3. This is not Monopoly. I don't know about you guys, but when I buy a game called Monopoly Cheaters Edition, I expect it to have Monopoly as well as the Cheaters Edition editions. I expect an experience that's at least similar to Monopoly. Unfortunately, MCE contains a distinct lack of Monopoly. We all know that usually games of Monopoly can go for 2 to 3 hours if not more. But for whatever reason, MCE is absolutely obsessed with reducing its playtime, and there is no line it will not cross to make this happen. It's as if this game took every single comment regarding how long Monopoly is to heart. As a result, there are several seemingly pointless mechanics or changes, and there are tons of features from regular Monopoly that just do not exist. This is already infuriating in itself because this design philosophy does not need to be here, and it's responsible for countless bad design decisions from here on out. When people buy Monopoly, they expect Monopoly. MCE was not advertised as a faster version of Monopoly, so you're getting something you did not even pay for. Especially if you enjoyed the pace of normal Monopoly like I do. Anyway, let's take a look at everything from normal Monopoly that doesn't exist in MCE. Perhaps the most noticeable and substantial change is the removal of houses. You can no longer build houses on your properties because they don't exist anymore. Instead, you just buy hotels and that's it. Houses in general add tons of strategy to normal Monopoly, and the fact that they're gone for seemingly no reason really stings. Hasbro even advertises this like it's a good thing. They're like, yeah, who needs houses? We know you just want the satisfaction of putting a hotel on your property. And that's so unbelievably false. Part of the reason placing a hotel on your property is so satisfying is because you had to work to get to that point. You had to build 4 houses before you could place that hotel, and then boom, suddenly you feel a lot more powerful. And you are. If you have a hotel on any of the larger properties in regular Monopoly, you have a good chance of bankrupting someone if they land on that space once. In MCE, due to the lack of houses, the consequences of landing on a hotel are much less, resulting in a much less punishing space, and therefore a much less satisfying space if you're the one who owns it. This change benefits nobody, removes satisfying gameplay strategies and variation, and removes a beloved feature that everyone expects to be in a game that has been played since 1935! Another major feature that got removed are the railroads. I mentioned earlier that I have a few strategies when I play Monopoly, and the railroads are one of those strategies. They're quite powerful because there are 4 of them total, making them more common than any other property group, and you don't need to build houses or hotels on them to make them more powerful. MCE essentially took that entire meta, scooped out all of its insides a la FNAF's sister location, and left its limp corpse on the board so all of us can remember how much we love the old railroads. Seriously, that's how it feels. The railroad spaces are still there, but they can no longer be purchased by players. They no longer have unique names, and there is no strategy involved or punishment for landing on them. This feels like a direct attack against me specifically, but I know that I'm not the only one who is devastated by this change. So I bet you're wondering, what do these spaces do now that they're a ghost of their former self? Well, when you land on one, you move forward to the next railroad space, and then your turn ends. What? So just to be clear, when you land on one of these spaces, you move across a quarter of the board and nothing else happens? This is the mechanic that was so important that railroads needed to be completely removed in order to justify its inclusion? What? This upsets me greatly if you couldn't tell. There are like 2 reasons to have this mechanic at all. One being to make the game faster, which again is lame and not asked for from this spin-off. And 2, to possibly skip over people's loaded properties. But here's the thing. Random chance is what determines where you land in Monopoly, and that's the same with or without this feature, so that aspect of it is completely useless. And if you believe that Monopoly should be an experience, and you're content with that experience being 2 to 3 hours long, then the other aspect of this is useless as well. Blatantly removing features from an established game formula is absolutely criminal, and maybe that's where MCE got this theme from. Believe it or not, I'm still not done. Or should I say MCE isn't done removing features from itself. Were you a fan of the utilities? You know, the waterworks and the electric company? They are completely absent in this version. Not even a trace of them remains. That's yet another batch of properties removed, and this time they aren't even replaced by anything, making their absence completely pointless. Also, both the luxury tax and income tax spaces are completely removed. Now, admittedly, the utilities and the tax spaces aren't nearly as much of a loss as the railroads, but these 4 spaces are what I like to call variety spaces. Without the variety spaces, the variety of gameplay is greatly decreased, making the game much less replayable overall, and makes the game less enjoyable and interesting to play. When I first looked at the MCE board, the first thing I noticed was how few spaces there are. It's jarring, especially when you consider the pointlessness of the new railroads. There is not a lot that can happen when you move your piece. You got properties, chance, chest, and the useless railroads. The remaining variety spaces are the 4 corners. As for those, Go and Go to Jail remain untouched from the original. But oh boy, Jail sure is a doozy. Here's a little side tangent. Basically, only one person can be in jail at any given time due to this incredibly gimmicky piece of plastic here. This is the handcuff, one of the innovative additions to MCE. Whenever you're in jail, you have to wear the handcuff part, and then place the orange part under the board. This is the most maliciously designed game component I've ever seen and used. The handcuff itself is just a little too small. Like, I have a relatively skinny wrist, and this is meant to be a family game, so I can't imagine adults with slightly wider wrists would be able to tolerate wearing this thing for more than a few minutes. And this is problematic, as I'll explain later. Additionally, the chain is far too short. It's definitely less than a foot long, and because of this, your entire arm has what feels like no wiggle room, and if you make any sudden movements, you end up shifting the entire board, displacing all of the things on it. The most useless and actively detrimental game component ever. And because this junk exists, only one person can be in jail? If someone is already in jail and you get sent to jail, the other player goes free immediately. The only reason multiple players cannot be in jail at the same time is because there is only one handcuff. I guess that's just another feature removed. It's completely illogical, and I hate it. What really makes me mad though is I know this game component was only added to allow a specific cheat to exist. We'll talk about that later. On the other hand, free parking has been nerfed by quite a bit. If you land on it, you get to draw either a chance or community chest card, your choice. While this does make sense in the context of MCE, this rule has reduced the payout and complexity of this space by quite a bit. Simple means fast, and this game needs to go fast for some reason. Now there is one other aspect of the board I'd like to talk about. There are 3 properties that have had their price lowered substantially. States Avenue, for example, is worth only $20. This makes it 1/3 of the price of Mediterranean Avenue, which is supposed to be the cheapest property in the game, as it's the first property on the board. Atlantic Avenue is half the price of its yellow counterparts. And Pennsylvania Avenue, which should be the 3rd most valuable property in the game, is free. What? Why? There is nothing more core Monopoly than how the properties are valued in comparison with each other. The further along the board a property is, the more it costs, and the more it could potentially pay out. It's an excellent risk-reward system, and gives players a lot to consider before choosing to purchase a property or not. But these properties, and Pennsylvania Avenue in particular, completely throw that beautiful system into a nearby trash fire where it is incinerated to ash. Now, instead of being presented with a tough and pricey choice of buying Pennsylvania, you just get it for free. There's no reason to not take it after all. This transforms any potential battle or negotiations for the second most valuable property group into a luck-based event, which absolutely blows. Do you think they implemented this mechanic to make the game faster? Probably! Yet another mechanic they gutted from this game is the mortgaging system. It is no longer here. At all. Mortgaging is such a clutch mechanic in the late game, and can save players from the brink of bankruptcy, but God forbid MCE have any nuance to its gameplay strategy, right? I mean, why do we need any mechanics at all? We can just go around a square board until we all die, right? So what am I really trying to say here? MCE is not Monopoly. It is less than Monopoly. Despite having the Monopoly logo on the front of the box, there are so many mechanical differences, or should I say, missing mechanics from base Monopoly, that already you are not getting what you paid for. It's undeniable that there are a lot of Monopoly things here, but there's just much less of it, and it feels so wrong. How can it really be Monopoly without the houses, the railroads, the utilities, the tax spaces, mortgaging, and proper property pricing? In my opinion, I don't think it can be called Monopoly at all. I'd call this like 65% Monopoly. But you wouldn't buy that, would you? Of course not. Now I bet you've noticed that I'm talking about Monopoly Cheaters Edition, and I haven't even mentioned the new cheat-based mechanics yet. I really wanted to drill it into your head how flawed this game was before the cheats were even added, so you have an accurate perception on how the foundation of this game is not a foundation, but actually a shattered piece of rubble. Anyway, let's talk about the cheats. Chapter 4. Cheating in MCE. At the start of the game, a few random cheats are selected and placed in the center of the board. These are the, quote, valid cheats, unquote, that anyone can use. When you attempt one of these cheats, you only succeed if the next player rolls the dice to start their turn. At that point, you can announce you got away with it and reap the benefits of cheating. Like, you have diplomatic immunity for cheating if a turn has passed, so you get to announce it. That won't make anyone mad at all. I should clarify, though, that getting away with the cheat is not the only benefit of cheating. There are actual benefits to using each specific cheat, but only if you succeed. Conversely, there are punishments for when you get caught cheating. There are a total of 15 cheats in MCE, and some of them are badly designed, while others are terribly designed. And everything in between. Let's go over them, shall we? The first cheat is when you attempt to move someone else's piece instead of yours. The problem with this one is that it's more likely you moved someone else's piece on accident rather than attempting the cheat. Because of this, you're often caught and suffer the punishment for something you may not have meant to do. That punishment being, the other player gets to move your piece anywhere on the board. The logical step would be to place the piece on the property they own of the highest value, and this is such a devastating punishment for what could have been an accident. This is also the start of the reoccurring theme of vagueness in these cheats. There is so much gray area in some of these things that should not be there. What constitutes a cheat or an attempted cheat or an accidental cheat is not specified. Just a sign that this game was not thought through even slightly. The second cheat is taking the handcuff off when you're in jail. As I mentioned previously, this thing is uncomfortable and impractical, and if you have a slightly larger than average wrist, you may not even be able to put the thing on. If this thing is physically uncomfortable for you, you're completely out of luck because other players will farm your punishment every turn. That punishment being, you pay the person who caught you $100. Have fun being bankrupt if you have any muscles at all. This cheat is also the only reason the handcuff exists, and as you can see, it is only a limiting factor when it comes to gameplay, and has no reason to be here. The third cheat is taking $300 when you pass go instead of $200. I suppose now is a good time to say that there is no designated banker in MCE. Instead, everyone is their own banker, and the entire banker setup is passed to the current player when it's the start of their turn. I can say from experience that passing this thing around is unbelievably tedious. Thankfully, this cheat doesn't come up frequently in-game, but that doesn't stop people from staring you down whenever you take money from the bank, and that is not a fun feeling. Also, you need to specifically steal $300 instead of $200. If you were to steal any other amount, would the cheat even activate? Probably not. So what's stopping you from stealing all of the $100 bills in the game? Nothing! Also, if someone called you out for stealing any amount that isn't an extra $100 for passing go, they would be punished by being forced to pay $100. How is this fair? Do you see how a game that incorporates cheating into its rules is fundamentally flawed? If you were going to steal money, you're incentivized to steal even more so you can avoid punishment. Or you can just steal money from the bank during any other time in broad daylight rather than when you pass go to achieve the same effect. This is so stupid! The fourth cheat is swapping one of your title deed cards for a different one owned by another player or the bank. Admittedly, this is one of the harder cheats to pull off, but if you need to leave the table for any reason, like taking a phone call, going to the bathroom, getting yourself a drink, you know, reasonable stuff like that, you're done. All of your stuff will be swapped by the time you're back, and there's nothing you can do. You would need to correctly guess who stole each of your stolen possessions, and that involves memorizing every property that everyone has as well as what's left in the bank. This is absolutely unreasonable, especially since players can just hide the deed cards from your vision. MCE is so desperate for attention that if you get distracted for any amount of time, consider yourself bankrupt. Oh yeah, by the way, if you get away with this cheat, you get to place a free hotel on your newly stolen property for free. Are you joking me, Hasbro? It's rules like this that convince me this game had maybe 30 minutes of total playtesting before being produced. The fifth cheat is removing a hotel from another player's property. This is another one that's more likely to be triggered by accident, because people will notice if their hotel is missing, assuming they didn't have to get up and do something like I mentioned earlier. If you nudge the board, using the handcuffs for example, or anything else, you may accidentally shift a hotel off of someone's property, and as punishment, you need to pay the other player or players $100 and then go to jail. We love lack of clarification in games. Have fun wearing that stupid handcuff where you're more likely to nudge the board again. The sixth cheat is charging a player more than they owe for rent. This one is so mean for no reason. There are 22 properties in MCE, and they can each have 3 possible rent charges. You cannot expect players to memorize these prices. The easy and lame solution here would involve being super lame and asking the other player, "Can I see the title deed card?" every single time you land on a property owned by someone else. And at that point, why even have this cheat in the game in the first place? It only slows the game down. I thought this game was all about going fast. I guess not. The seventh cheat is stealing a title deed card from another player or the bank. This one is probably the one that did the most mental damage to me as I played this game. It is deceptively easy to steal properties from the bank, and if you have a surplus of properties, it's deceptively easy to have a property stolen from you. And as a reward, the other player gets to keep your property, and then they get to place a hotel on it for free! It was this cheat that cemented my feelings on this game. This cheat broke me. It made me feel defeated. I didn't want to try anymore when this cheat got used on me every other turn. It completely destroyed my competitive spirit. Why even work or pay money for any of your properties when you can just steal them and get a hotel for free? This is the most unbalanced and unfair thing in my opinion. It's so infuriating. And God forbid you need to do anything else during your game of MCE, because your properties will all vanish and you'll be left with nothing, and the other players will have hotels on what were once your properties. If you are someone who enjoys this mechanic, then you have not experienced this mechanic to its fullest. If you win with this mechanic, it is not a satisfying one, and if you lose, you'll feel like you were unfairly eliminated from the game, which you were! If there was one cheat I would remove from the game, it would be this one. The eighth cheat is giving another player less than you owe when you need to give them change. There are so many of these cheats that are double disrespectful, like the reward should be the money you saved by scamming the other player, but instead, you get that as well as an additional $100 from the bank. Like, you get some money, and as a reward, here's more money! What? There was already incentive there. This reward is not necessary. The 9th cheat is drawing a chance card, and instead of doing what's written on the card, you do anything you want instead. This is another one that involves memorizing a large amount of material, 16 cards to be specific. This is extremely unfair, especially to new players, but once again, it can be countered by simply asking, "Can I see the card?" So why is this cheat even here at all? The 10th cheat is moving a hotel from the bank or another player's property onto one of your properties. This can be easily done if you buy hotels in bulk and just sneak an extra one out of the bag. Just another way to get a free hotel. Hotels are such a common reward for completing cheats that honestly it is almost never worth it to buy a hotel legitimately. And if MCE is going to hand out hotels willy-nilly, why even have hotels at all? I cannot believe I just said that. This game has broken me. By the way, I'm not even going to go over the chance or chest cards in this version in detail, but just know that several of them give people free hotels, and several of them send people to handcuff torture, and several of them force property trades, which should never be a thing, ever. All they do is add to the existing problems present in MCE, so just acknowledge them, I guess. The 11th cheat is stealing money from the bank. Yeah, that's right, any amount. This is one of the easiest cheats to pull off, and as a reward, all players pay you $100, quote, out of admiration. Like, no, I do not. I do not admire you for doing a simple sleight of hand trick that hurts all players. This cheat is used so frequently that money will be trading hands constantly for no reason, and it's so annoying. It's such an extreme punishment for failing to catch someone stealing at the very least a $1 bill. And once again, stealing money is rewarded with more money. It makes no sense. Also, stop typing, I already know what you're going to say. This cheat is a counter to the other cheat about stealing 300 when you pass go. Not true. None of these cheats can reliably counter the presence of other cheats because, like I said, at the start of the game, only a few of them are selected and valid for rewards and punishments. And they're random. Even if these two cheats are in the same game, if you call someone out for the wrong cheat, you're punished. And you can always claim the other of the two cheats if you're stealing money when you pass go. Regardless, both mechanics are flawed individually anyway. I highly recommend not looking for anything thought out in this gameplay because you will be searching for the remainder of your life. The 12th cheat is skipping out on rent. In normal Monopoly, this happens semi-frequently. The reward is getting away with not paying rent, and that is satisfying and fair, relatively, for both parties. In MCE, however, they cranked this up to 11, because if you successfully avoid paying rent, you get to steal the property that you avoided paying rent for. Why? Not getting paid rent is punishment enough, and now your property is gone. And this is just another reason to never pay for anything in this game legitimately, because you can get everything for free by cheating. It makes the money much less meaningful and the gameplay much less enjoyable and satisfying. The 13th cheat is charging rent for another player's property. This is something that can also accidentally happen in normal Monopoly. I've seen it happen before. So if you accidentally do this, have fun paying the property's face value to its owner. But if you succeed, you get to steal the property! Why pay for anything? The 14th cheat is moving as many spaces as you want. This is another easy one to pull off, and the reward is absurd. $200 if you get away with it. Money is meaningless in this game, and this is one of the many reasons why. Finally, the 15th cheat is stealing money from another player. If you succeed, you keep the money, and you get the special opportunity to buy the least expensive unowned property on the board. But why buy it when you can just steal it, right? Why do anything other than cheat in this game? Why? I'm genuinely curious. Please tell me! You guys, my throat is so dry. I have to take a sip of Gatorade every 5 seconds because of how taxing this is on my voice. I hope you're happy. As you can see, every single cheat in this game is fundamentally flawed in one way or another. The cheats either have no reason for existing, punish players for not knowing every single thing about the game, trivialize other existing game mechanics, trivialize each other, or all of these. And all of them make the game less balanced, fair, and enjoyable. Not to mention that they had to remove existing mechanics from Monopoly to, quote, make room for the cheats. This entire setup was flawed from the start, and it led to a flawed game. Chapter 5. My experience with MCE. I have played MCE exactly 2 times in my life. 2 times. That is all it took to cement my opinion on this thing. I do not own this game, and I refuse to play it ever again in my life. The experience truly feels hostile and antagonistic towards the player, and I enjoy games that feel that way. This game hits different. In both games I played, my competitive spirit was completely ripped from my very soul by the cheesy and unfair nature of the cheats, and my heart was broken over the loss of far too many mechanics present in original Monopoly. As you are playing this game, if you want to have any chance of winning, you need to be alert and concentrate on all other players' movements at all times. And all of the other players will likely be doing the same. If you attempt to play this game casually, you will lose. The result of this is a harsh and stress-inducing game that gives you no room to think about anything else. Anything another player does could completely cripple your game, so you need to watch them. When I played this game, there was no background music playing, and multiple turns would go by where nobody said a word. Dead silence. Uncomfortable. That's how hard we were focusing. How is this fun in any way? It isn't. This makes the reward for successfully cheating even more valuable as well, which I previously stated is already far too much in some cases. If you want to win, it's also a necessity for you to cheat, because the cheats are so broken that if you plan to play the game fairly, there is no way for you to catch up with the cheaters. I did something while playing this game that I never do, and that's give up. I didn't quit the game, I just stopped trying. It was just so taxing to attempt to win this game that I decided it was simply not worth the energy required. Needless to say, this game was miserable to play. You know who was having a good time though? That one friend who suggested we buy MCE. They got some sick satisfaction out of draining me out of all of my properties and winning the game shortly after. It was clear that the game was not worth the energy for anyone except for that one friend, and because of that we effectively let them win, and they had a blast. I felt numb. I didn't care that I had lost or who had won. I was just thankful that the ordeal was over. Of course, later that same week, that one friend suggested we play MCE again, and during the entirety of that game, I refused to try. I made it clear that I didn't want to play the game, but we played it anyway. So I did the bare minimum and lost the game just to get it over with. And at that point, I really wasn't playing the game. There was no strategy involved. My brain was barely tuned in, and because I decided not to care about the game for even a moment, I would consider the experience more enjoyable than the first time I played it. By not playing the game as intended, I didn't stress myself out, and I didn't care what happened to me. The game ended, and everything was right in the world. I'm pretty sure it was actual years after that day that I played normal Monopoly again. The rotten experience that was MCE soured my view of Monopoly so much that it took years to recover. Thankfully, normal Monopoly is still an enjoyable experience, and I look back on those 2 games of MCE and laugh at how willing I was to torture myself back then. Don't get me wrong, if someone today genuinely asked me if I wanted to play MCE, my fight or flight response would trigger. They would need to be ready to catch these hands. Chapter 6. Cheating in normal Monopoly is better. There's a reason cheating in Monopoly is so common. 1, it's relatively easy to get away with, and it's against the rules to cheat, of course. Whatever you get away with in Monopoly is your reward for cheating, and you're punished accordingly for trying to cheat by what the other players deem fair. Incredibly, that's a better system than MCE. It's not an official system, and yet it's better. Monopoly offers a lot more freedom for you to cheat as well, because you can cheat in any way you want instead of the 15 designated cheats in MCE. MCE even has the audacity to say, quote, all other cheating is off limits. The 15 cheats in MCE aren't even cheats then, are they? They're just additional unbalanced rules that they chose to call cheats. But no, you can't cheat for real, that's cheating. That is hypocritical, that is not what people want. And then later, in the same instruction manual, they mention the Ultimate Cheaters mode, which is an alternate game mode where real cheating is allowed again. It says, quote, "You'll need to make some house rules to deal with the really wild cheats." They are clearly not even trying! Why have any of the cheats in the game at all if you can do this instead? If you were to play this game mode, you would be playing Monopoly, but with less mechanics and no other changes. It makes no logical sense. Go buy normal Monopoly instead. You can play this game mode without any of the components in MCE, and you'll have all of the removed mechanics back. In MCE, the cheats, money, dice, properties, and now the game itself is completely meaningless and worthless, all because this game mode exists. This game mode is how most people play normal Monopoly anyway. Do not waste your money. Chapter 7. Price. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention that this game is at least $5 more expensive than normal Monopoly? I understand that may not be that much, but the fact they charge more than base Monopoly at all is insulting. There are far less game components in this box than in normal Monopoly, and I'm sure all of the extra money is paying for that stupid handcuff which shouldn't be in the game at all. If you're a completely logical person, there is no reason to buy this game. For less money, you're getting a better game with more features. It isn't that difficult to make this decision. Chapter 8. Who was this made for? I'm absolutely convinced that this game has no audience. The only people who buy this game are collectors and people who were fooled by Hasbro's genius marketing tactics. If you enjoy normal Monopoly like myself, you will not enjoy this game, because this does not feel like you're playing Monopoly, and so many original features have been removed. If you are a cheater, you will not enjoy this game, because not only are the cheats brought into the mechanics of the game, meaning they're no longer cheats, but everyone will be watching you like a hawk the entire game, because people will expect you to cheat. Your plan just got a lot harder. These are what I believe to be the two major intended demographics of MCE, and both of them would rather be playing normal Monopoly than this piece of toxic waste. The only person that I know that would enjoy MCE is that one friend, and that one friend sure can continue to enjoy the game all they want. I just won't be there. Chapter 9. Aren't you making a torture game? You hypocrite? Now, it wouldn't be fair of me to judge MCE so harshly without addressing the fact that I'm making a game that could also be described as torturous. I'm currently making a game that combines every existing version of Uno into one super game called Chemicards, aka the Uno Amalgam. By the way, go check that out if you haven't already. I'll leave the link to the first episode in the description. Also, if you like board game stuff in general, you should subscribe because I make those. Anyway, there are a lot of differences between the two types of torture present in these two titles. Firstly, the main reason Chemicards may seem torturous is the complexity and the learning curve. Because there is so much content in the game, new players may take a while to learn the mechanics. I'm doing my best to streamline the learning process as much as possible by including rules on certain cards and generalizing larger rules to be easily understandable. Other than that, the mechanics are that of base Uno, which is a very simple game. In the end, more content is more variety, replayability, and more game for you to enjoy. MCE, on the other hand, removes mechanics from Monopoly, so there's less strategy and less fun to be had. And the things they replace the removed mechanics with are the real torture. Secondly, while cheating can occur in any game, in Chemicards it's against the rules to cheat. There's already plenty of ways to mess with other players anyway. Cheating isn't even necessary to gain an advantage. Meanwhile, MCE actively encourages you to be publicly malicious to others via cheating. Thirdly, Chemicards will be balanced, mark my words. MCE is definitely not. Fourthly, if I were to describe Chemicards in 3 words from a gameplay standpoint, I would choose random, complex, and eventful. If I were to describe MCE gameplay in 3 words, I'd choose exhausting, broken, and frustrating. All this being said, I believe Chemicards may be considered torturous for casual gamers who aren't used to complex games, and they may get overwhelmed at first, but once you've played it, it clicks, and for the most part that's no longer an issue. Just because a game is complex does not mean it's bad. Take a look at Seven Wonders with expansions, or Smash Up. Those games are super complex, but they're still beloved and award-winning games. MCE is torturous constantly, for all players, in a way that I have never experienced before or since. MCE is uniquely terrible. And I actually enjoy playing games that I know are bad or too long or unbalanced or whatever it may be, unlike most other people, and yet I refuse to play MCE ever again due to the repulsive experience I had with it. I feel like that says a lot, but you guys don't know me personally, so take that how you will. Chapter 10. This has gone on for long enough. I feel as if this video has properly demonstrated why MCE is the worst tabletop game I've ever played. And if you made it this far into the video and you still disagree with my opinion that MCE is a flawed game, that's totally fine. You're allowed to think whatever you want to think. I'm surprised you made it this far if you still like this game, honestly. Good on you for being willing to hear other people's opinions. By all means, do not let this video prevent you from enjoying MCE. If you think there are some redeeming qualities to MCE that I didn't cover, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm more than willing to hear why people get enjoyment out of something that I'm incapable of getting joy out of. That being said, if you start attacking me personally for no reason in the comments, I'll probably just react with the clown emoji and continue enjoying my life without MCE in it. I want to thank you all for watching this video. There aren't many things that I have this strong of an opinion about, so who knows if I'll ever do a video like this again. I suppose this was kinda a board game review, huh? I rate Monopoly Cheaters Edition negative 36 out of 100. Like and subscribe, lol. That being said, there's one final point I want to address. I do think there is one thing that we can all agree on, whether you agree or disagree with all of my previous opinions. And that's... Chapter 11, the purple properties are not purple anymore. Hasbro took the first two properties on the board and made them poop brown instead of purple, resulting in my second favorite color getting no properties in this game. I'm pretty sure MCE wasn't even the first Monopoly version to do this either. Why did this stick? Purple would have played into the neon aesthetic way better than this. There is absolutely no reason to make this change. It's completely nonsensical to make this change. It doesn't help that these are two of my favorite properties in the game. It's like Hasbro wanted to kick my shins in particular with this one. I'll never forgive you, Hasbro. Do you hear me? I'll never forgive you for this! Hasbro!